Andrew Winchester thought he found a helpless maid he could lock away and break. He had no idea he'd just invited a cold-blooded predator into his home, a woman who'd already spent 10 years in prison for killing a monster. In this house, he isn't the hunter, he's the prey. This is the story of a housemaid whose life is filled with terrifying and strange events. The more she tries to escape the mansion, the deeper she sinks into its darkness. Her name was Millie. She had no home, no food, no family. She slept in her car and spent her days in a coffee shop. Life was crushing her. But today was different. Today was the biggest interview of her life. She had applied for a housemaid's job in the mansion of wealthy businessman Andrew Winchester. His wife, Nina, interviewed her and promised to call with a decision. Millie had no hope. Her resume was fake, and she wore glasses only to look professional and confident. Still, what else could she do but regret? The next morning, Nina called. Millie had been selected. She had no idea her life was about to change forever. Nina seemed kind-hearted. She gave Millie freedom, to stay, to eat, to enjoy herself. Nina was pregnant, and she already had a daughter. Caring for the child became Millie's responsibility. She was even given a phone with a credit card for groceries. Nina explained the house rules, then went off to prepare her speech for the next day's parent meeting at school. That night, Andrew returned home with his daughter and met Millie. He was surprised. Nina had hired her without asking him. Still, he arranged a small room for Millie upstairs. He didn't object. The next morning, Millie woke to find her door locked. After struggling, she managed to open it and ran downstairs. What she saw was unbearable. Nina was frantic in the kitchen, running like a madwoman. Her behavior was terrifying compared to yesterday. Her written speech was missing. Millie had unknowingly thrown it in the garbage. After a tense struggle, Andrew calmed Nina down. She regained her senses, but turned to Millie with a chilling warning. Such a mistake will never be tolerated again. Millie quietly collected the broken utensils and threw them outside. There, she met Miley Joe, a man who had once worked for the family. As they spoke, Millie felt eyes on them. Someone was listening in secret. It was Nina. Behind the walls of this mansion, there was clearly a dark secret. Back in her room, Millie noticed splintered wood and deep scratch marks carved into the inside of the door. The only window was sealed shut, impossible to open. The air was suffocating. But her financial struggles tied her hands. She confronted Nina, demanding conditions. She wanted the key to her room, and the window unlocked for fresh air. If the door jammed from outside, she needed to open it from within. Nina smiled, assuring her that her requests would be met. The only comfort in this house was Andrew. Each evening, he greeted Millie warmly, asking about her meals and rest. But one night, the boundaries between them broke. Andrew realized that one small mistake could cost Millie both her job and her shelter. The next morning was Saturday, Millie's day off. She had an important meeting, but Nina resisted letting her leave. Fear consumed Nina, as if Millie might run away and abandon her duties. In her paranoia, she changed the lock on Millie's room and handed her the key. Finally, after Andrew's persuasion, Nina relented. Millie left to meet her psychologist. During the session, the doctor probed her private life. For 10 years, Millie had not been intimated with anyone. Even with advice, her worries lingered. At 1 a.m., Millie awoke. Believing everyone asleep, she crept downstairs to watch TV. She had barely settled when Andrew appeared. Uneasy, she tried to leave, but Andrew stopped her. Coincidentally, the movie playing was one Millie liked. As they watched together, Andrew told her, "You're not a servant here. You're part of this family." Nina kept pressing Millie about her family. Millie admitted she had been separated from them for years and never spoke to them. Andrew shared his own pain. His father had passed away. But Nina's past was far darker. As a child, her parents died in a house fire. The police believed the fire was caused by Nina's mistake. Living with that guilt was likely the reason behind her strange behavior. They were discussing Nina's past when she suddenly fainted. Later that night, at 2 a.m., Nina saw Andrew and Millie watching a movie together. Her fever spiked with rage. She fired Millie on the spot. Panicked and trembling, Millie reminded her that Nina had forbidden her from watching TV. She begged for forgiveness, promising such a mistake would never happen again. Seeing Millie helpless, Nina relented. but only on one condition. Millie had to stay away from Andrew. The next morning, another layer of Nina's lies was exposed. Her friends visited, and Nina told them she was still trying to get pregnant. Millie was stunned. Nina had clearly lied to her before, claiming she was already pregnant. She was a strange, double-faced woman. Millie began to feel pity for Andrew. She decided that once she saved enough money, she would leave the mansion forever. But just like last Saturday, Nina didn't let her go. Millie had to attend a party with Andrew, taking responsibility for Elle. That evening, when Andrew returned, Millie asked the question that had been haunting her. Is Elle not your real daughter? Andrew confessed the truth. Elle was not his biological child. He explained that he had wanted a child for years, but every attempt had failed. One night, Millie awoke to a scream. She rushed downstairs, and froze. Nina stood clutching a shard of glass, her hand dripping with blood. Millie thought Nina had attacked Andrew, but the truth was different. Nina had been shattered by her friends' cruel words. They had called her crazy. Nina was not worthy of Andrew's love. She was no less than a psycho killer. Yet Andrew remained calm. He spoke gently, disarmed her, and snatched the glass from her hand. The next morning, Nina appeared transformed. She apologized to Millie for her lies. She explained she wasn't pretending to be pregnant, she was manifesting it. To prove her sincerity, she gifted Millie an expensive dress. Millie hesitated, but she didn't want to challenge Nina's stubbornness. She wanted to make Andrew happy and correct her mistakes. Nina planned a private escape with Andrew, an exclusive show and a luxury hotel stay that Saturday. She asked Millie to care for Elle while she was away, just as she always did on Millie's supposed holidays. She even gave Millie the responsibility of booking the hotel. By now, Millie was used to it. Her days off existed only on paper. The next day, Nina was busy, so Millie picked Elle up from school. There, she met another housemaid who revealed a horrifying truth. Years ago, Nina had tried to drown her own daughter in a bathtub. Not only that, she had swallowed a large number of sleeping pills in an attempt to end her life. Elle survived only because Andrew suspected something was wrong. He alerted the police, and they arrived in time to save her. Shaken, Millie went to Andrew to uncover the depths of this secret. But Nina saw them together and quickly drove Andrew away. Moments later, she exploded in rage over the hotel booking. "Who told you to book a hotel?" she screamed. Millie was stunned. She reminded Nina that she herself had given her the task. But Nina denied it, claiming she was taking her daughter to Washington camp that Saturday. "Why would I ask you to book a hotel?" she snapped. To make matters worse, the ticket was non-refundable. Nina directly threatened Millie, saying the money wasted on hotel booking would be deducted from her salary. Millie tried to defend herself, but Andrew stepped in. He calmed the situation, promising to arrange a refund. That Saturday, Nina left for Washington with her daughter. Meanwhile, Andrew failed to cancel the hotel reservation despite countless attempts. He handed the ticket to Millie. Alone in an unfamiliar city, she had no one to join her. Finally, Andrew decided to go with her so the money wouldn't be wasted. That evening, they attended a music concert, shared dinner, and spoke about their past struggles. At the hotel later that night, Millie's hidden desires surfaced. She longed to be closer to Andrew, but he showed no interest. Suddenly, her phone buzzed, Nina's message. She demanded a video call immediately, threatening to fire Millie if she refused. Panicked, Millie froze. This job was her last hope. Andrew understood her fear and reassured her, "I won't let Nina harm you." In that fragile moment of trust, they embraced. Neither realized this was the turning point. Their relationship had just begun. By morning, shocking news arrived. Nina was already returning, less than 24 hours after leaving. Terrified of being caught, Millie and Andrew rushed home. Millie was consumed by guilt. She decided last night was a mistake, something that must never happen again. But Andrew was done hiding. He declared, "This will happen every day. Let everything else go to hell." He had abandoned his wife and society's judgment for his own happiness. Soon after, Nina returned. Seeing the house calm and normal, she apologized to Millie for her misbehavior the night before. But beneath her sweet words, she slowly began to wield the sharpest weapon of all, her manipulative charm, the sweet knife. In the middle of the conversation, Nina revealed Millie's darkest secret to Andrew, something Millie had hidden from everyone. Millie had spent 10 years in jail before coming here. Hearing this, Andrew was shaken to his core. After prison, Millie wanted to rebuild her life. That's why she left her city and came here. Nina had hired her, claiming it was because of her big heart, even though her documents and resume were fake. But now Nina twisted the story, saying she couldn't risk another tragedy like Millie's past car accident, especially with her daughter's life at stake. On that pretext, she handed Millie the keys to her car, assigning her to pick up Elle from school. The real shock came when Millie went grocery shopping. A friend of Nina admired her phone's camera, then casually remarked how unusual it was for a maid to use her employer's phone. Millie froze. In that instant, she realized the truth. Nina controlled her phone completely. Through its camera and microphone, Nina had been watching and listening to her every move. From the very beginning, Nina had known everything. That night in the hotel, Nina had seen and heard it all, live. Millie's reality was exposed. As she left the store, police arrested her, claiming the car she drove was stolen. Millie screamed that it belonged to her boss. The police contacted Andrew, who reluctantly vouched for her and secured her release. Even he was stunned that Nina could orchestrate such a scheme. That's when Millie confessed. Nina had discovered what happened at the hotel, and this was her revenge. Back at the mansion, Nina struck again. She accused Millie of stealing the very clothes she had gifted her. Then, with cold finality, she fired her. But instead of sending her to jail, Nina chose a crueler punishment. Finally, Andrew lost his patience. He threatened Nina to leave. Nina screamed, "This is our home. Throw this witch out." But Andrew didn't listen. In an instant, Nina lost her home, her status, and everything she had built. As she stepped outside, tears streamed down her face. With Nina gone, Andrew and Millie felt completely free. They filled every corner of the mansion, from the kitchen to the bedroom and bathroom, with their happiness. But one morning, Enzo stared at Millie in a strange, unsettling way. Startled, she dropped the utensils in her hands. The precious clay dishes, gifted by Andrew's mother, shattered into 21 pieces. Millie complained to Enzo. At that moment, Andrew snapped. He fired him on the spot. Then he led her upstairs, opened champagne, and spent time with her. But suddenly, Millie fainted. When she regained consciousness, the door was locked from the outside. The key was gone. At first, she thought it was a joke. But Andrew's true face was revealed. In return for those 21 broken pieces, he demanded punishment. If Millie wanted to leave, she had to carve 21 deep cuts into her own body. Horrified, Millie realized Andrew was a complete psycho. And in that moment, she understood Nina's plan. Nina had deliberately trapped her, sacrificing Millie to free herself from this hell. Nina's happiness was boundless. She returned home, blasted loud music, and celebrated her freedom. Her joy was proof of the torture she had endured at the hands of that madman for years. But Nina knew Millie would never escape alive. In the shadow of death, she wrote a letter to her daughter, a will that contained every truth of her life. Nina's story was tragic. Her life had shattered at a young age when her parents died, leaving her alone. She grew up in the darkness of a foster home. And in her final year of college, she fell into the doomed love of her own professor, a love that led her straight to destruction. This was Nina's first and most terrible mistake. A child was born, but the professor never gave her his name, too afraid of the world's judgment. After college, Nina began working. Her beauty was angelic, and everyone in the office longed to see her. Andrew's eyes were on her too. Soon, love grew between them, and they married. Nina believed she had finally found happiness. A beautiful house, a handsome husband, and that killer smile. It all felt like a fairy tale. But the fairy tale twisted into a nightmare. One morning, Andrew commented sweetly that Nina's hair didn't look good. She said she would consult a doctor, but he ignored her. One evening, he sent her upstairs to fetch a file, and locked the door from outside. Nina screamed, but Andrew thought it was a prank. Then his voice turned cold. "Nina, not everyone has beautiful hair like yours. You didn't take care of them. You will have to learn. This door will only open when you give me 100 hairs with their roots." Inside the room, there was only a toilet, a bucket, and 3 small containers of water. Nothing else. 2 days passed in hunger and thirst. Nina's screams faded into the darkness. Desperate to see her daughter, she tore out her hair and pushed it under the door. Andrew examined each strand carefully. Then, mercilessly, he said, "One of these hairs has a broken root. You must start again." Nina's soul trembled. But after endless regret, she completed the inhuman task. Finally, she was released from the darkroom. She grabbed the bottle of water Andrew handed her and drank it all at once. Then she ran to Elle, desperate to take her and escape. But Andrew already knew. The water was laced with intoxicating pills. Before Nina could reach her daughter, she collapsed in a drunken haze. When she opened her eyes, the sight was devastating. The bathtub was overflowing, and her innocent girl was drowning. The police arrived just as the tragedy unfolded. Andrew twisted the truth, convincing the world that Nina was a reckless woman who got drunk and tried to kill herself and her child. The law tore her away from her daughter and locked her in a mental asylum. Heavy antidepressants kept her mind in constant turmoil. 9 months passed, each day felt like a century. The torture and the longing to see her daughter hollowed Nina from the inside. Finally, her patience broke. She knelt before Andrew, begging for just a glimpse of her child. In return, she agreed to every cruel condition he demanded. Nina became a living corpse, her soul controlled entirely by Andrew. Yet deep inside, she clung to one decision. She would never allow the seed of that monster to grow in her womb. 4 years, she deceived Andrew, knowing that if she bore his child, she would be buried in this hell forever. Andrew punished her for the smallest mistakes. If she tried to escape, he dragged her back. To the outside world, Andrew was celebrated as a hero. But only the gardener, Enzo, saw Nina's truth. He considered her the real victim. Enzo even prepared a secret passport to help Nina and her daughter flee the country. But Andrew's eyes missed nothing. He discovered the passport and, as punishment, threw Nina back into the asylum dungeon. She had no money, no allies, and Andrew refused to divorce her. Then came the cruelest twist. Andrew targeted Nina's most dreaded weakness, her fair, delicate cheeks and her golden hair. From that moment, Nina began drafting her blueprint for freedom. And for this scheme, Millie was the perfect pawn. Millie hadn't gone to jail for an accident, she had committed murder and served 10 years. After her release, her parents rejected her. She slept in her old car, no one willing to give her a job. Nina knew Millie would cling to this mansion no matter what, even if death stared her in the face. Nina's plan was flawless. Enzo opposed it, hurt that she was sacrificing another's life for her own freedom. But Nina had no choice. Enzo stayed silent. She wrote everything in her diary, so that one day when her daughter read it, she would know the truth, that her mother was not evil, and she had never tried to harm her. But Nina's plan did not lead to her death. It worked. Andrew found a new target and released Nina from her hell. For Andrew, that broken plate wasn't just a utensil, it was a legacy of his ancestors. He declared that Millie must pay for her carelessness by carving a deep cut into her own body. Millie finally understood. She was no different from Andrew, rich, handsome, admired by many, but dark and cruel inside. Her past haunted her. Millie had killed a man to save a girl from his cruelty. But tragically, the girl died before testifying. Society trusted the rich man, not the poor girl. Even her parents abandoned her. She had been brilliant in her studies, but one moment destroyed all her dreams. She lost the case against the power of corrupt lawyers and a weak government system. 10 years in prison couldn't extinguish the fire burning inside her, the fire to punish monsters like Andrew. And even after her release, Millie could still recognize predators. Nina had intentionally called Millie to this mansion. She believed that a woman who had once killed a monster would know how to save herself again. Locked in the room, Millie understood the true value of freedom. Without hesitation, she carved 21 deep cuts into her stomach. Blood poured as she screamed for the door to open. The next morning, Andrew entered. He stood over her, dictating his rules and conditions, convinced he had raised Millie. But the moment she saw an opening, her hatred erupted. Millie attacked with all her strength, kicked him hard, snatched his phone, and locked him in the same room. Andrew screamed like a madman, but Millie ignored him. She drank water, ate breakfast, and finally felt peace. Then a message arrived on Andrew's phone. It was about Nina and Andrew's divorce. The papers were ready. Nina was about to be free. Yet before leaving the city, she felt guilty for Millie. Millie confronted Andrew again. The world said his smile was murderous. Instead of opening the door, she demanded a price. I want to take away your smile, so you can never trap another girl again. Andrew agreed, but Millie still refused to release him. That night, Nina sneaked back into the house. She thought Millie was still locked upstairs and came to save her. But unknowingly, she freed Andrew. His rage exploded. He hurled Nina aside and attacked Millie. But Millie was no weak prey. She escaped, leaving Andrew with Nina in his grip. Andrew began his sweet knife routine, apologizing and promising Nina a new beginning. That's when Millie emerged from the shadows. With all her strength, she shoved Andrew down the stairs. He fell from a height and died instantly. Nina cleverly dropped a bulb near his body to stage it as an accident. The police confirmed Andrew's death. His mother took no action. She already knew the truth about her son and refused to stain the family name. All of Andrew's wealth now belonged to Nina and Millie. She was ready for a new mission, another house, another woman trapped with a cruel husband, and another chance to fight monsters. So, friends, this was the story of the housemaid. I hope you enjoyed this thrilling journey.